So I have this big 200 ml tube of Winsor & Newton Payne's Gray. I've had it for, I don't know, 10 years, maybe longer, but it's sealed very well. Still have these nice big caps on it. And if I had to replace it, the thing's probably worth 40 bucks. I don't know. I have not been a fan of Payne's Gray as a member of my palette because I have found in the past when I've played with it, it doesn't feel like a clean color to mix into. On its own, it's not bad, but I felt that if I would mix other blues into it or try to make it into a purple, maybe it's a personal taste thing, but I just found it to be a little bit dirty looking. I don't mind playing with it some more. I have a lot of it in this too. I'm also not a fan of tinting a canvas very dark. There's something called refractive index. I don't know if they still put it on paint tubes. I should probably have a look here. No, this is all in German. And refractive index is an index, it's a scale of measurement regarding how good a color, doesn't matter what the color is, how good the color is at receiving light from an outside source, penetrating that paint, hitting the white backdrop of a canvas or whatever the color of the canvas is, and then refracting back, or rather reflecting back to you. But don't forget, it's not just reflecting, it's refracting, because it has to bounce, on a particulate level, almost a molecular level, but not quite, but a particulate level. It bounces off all of these little bits of pigment that are in there, hits the canvas, and starts to reflect, and bounces back off of all these other pigments back to your eye. That's called refraction. Okay, that's one definition of refraction. So, I know refraction is run it through a prism, separates the light band, blah, 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 blah. We're just talking about paint now. Now, if you take a white canvas and you stain it black or very dark, you remove the possibility for much refraction at all, because the light penetrates from the exterior, hits the canvas. If it's black, there's nothing there. You won't even get reflection. You need reflection for it to refract back to you, for the light bands to separate. That mostly applies to a style of painting where you lay in things very thinly, like glazes. Where you're into realism, where you have much thinner layers of paint. It's not so important if you use a knife, because if you're using a knife, you're laying on enough paint that, frankly, the color, the light that's trying to penetrate that paint is never going to hit the canvas and bounce back at you, because it's already saturated and absorbed. So most of the light you're seeing from that surface, that painted surface, is reflecting from the surface of the paint rather than going through the paint, hitting the canvas and coming back to you. Refractive index was very important to the old masters and their techniques. They're not that important, not as important to some of the newer styles. For example, using the knife. The glow that you can get from oil paint that you cannot quite match with acrylics without using a translucent medium of some sort. That glow from oils comes from the fact that it has a higher refractive index. Those particles of paint never sort of flatten out. They remain sort of in stasis, but sort of floating within their own medium, even though the thickness of the layer may only be 1/100th of a millimeter thick, still happens, and your light still perceives it. Okay, enough of that. I'm planning. I don't decide on what I'm going to do, knife or brush, until I have a painting washed in. I know I've mentioned that in previous videos. In this case, I'm just going to decide right away I'm going to use the knife. I want to make it thick. So I can get away with taking this Payne's Gray that I haven't used very much, aside from some experimenting. And I'm going to lay a big blob of it on my canvas, or on my palette here. Oops, the oil's separating, so I'll just take a little bit of my very expensive and exotic oil absorber, a couple of pieces of toilet paper, and pick up the excess. This brush, I don't know what the number is. It's probably a 12 or something. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Fact is, it's about an inch across, maybe slightly more. I'm just going to take the Payne's Gray. I'm not going to water it down too much. I guess water it down is the wrong term I should be saying. I won't turpentine it down too much. I'm going to stain the entire canvas dark. I'm not going to use any other colors, I think, but just straight Payne's Gray. I'm going to mix up this great big pile with this big fat brush and cover it. And I will still have a lot of Payne's Gray left over. I'll probably use it in upcoming paintings as my outlining. You know, when I make a charcoal sketch and I draw in the outlines, I'll probably just use that paint as well, because it is very, well, dark. You know, Payne's Gray without any white added is it's not the most opaque paint, but if I don't have to thin it off too much, it may work just fine. Yeah, and you know, regarding, yeah, see, it's not that opaque. It's really not that dark. I have almost no terps in that, no turpentine in that. It's still, it's kind of translucent. Anyway, we'll use it. And part of the reason I decided to do this is because if I'm going to use a knife, I don't think I'm going to worry too much. I'm going to challenge myself. I'm not going to worry about putting charcoal lines in there at all, or if any, there won't be very many. And then it'll be for the sake of the video, really, for the most part. As soon as you lay some color on top of this backdrop, it just pops out, and it makes, well, honestly, it makes for a really good illustration. So yeah, I'm doing this purely for selfish purposes. I'm not worried about workmanship. Payne's Gray is just fine to use. I wouldn't want to use straight Payne's Gray because I suppose it depends on which company you get it from, but I don't think it'll dry that fast as a wash-in or as a tint if I used it straight out of the tube. So that's why I'm adding a little bit of turpentine to it. Because I would like it to be dry by tomorrow morning. So that maybe I can take a knife and start playing. Or a brush. Maybe I will use a brush. I think I'm going to go with a knife though, because I want, as I said, I want to defeat the fact that this is dark by using a knife. to lay the paint on a little bit thicker. Oh yeah, back to that sunflower painting that I did a couple of decades ago. You know, it would only take a couple of strokes to really improve that painting, but you guys made it really clear to me that basically you were going to take me by the throat and shake some sense into me if I touched it. So, you know, at least for now, I'm not going to do that. I'm not a sentimental guy for the most part. I don't believe in filling the walls of my house with my trophies. I think that leans very much in the direction of narcissism. Just not a fan. But it was a painting given to my parents-in-law, and my wife and I both like it, and then yeah, we'll probably just we'll hang it. I don't know if they framed it or if we framed it. I can't remember. But it's oddly enough, unless paintings are drying, we don't have paintings upstairs. We have some paintings in storage, and we have some, you know, the odd one kicking around, but aside from the paintings that I hang upstairs to dry, to ready them for varnishing and then send them off to the gallery, by the time I'm done painting them, it almost never happens that I want to keep them. I want to move them on. I want to get on to the next thing. I don't want to say I'm sick of looking at them. We do own some paintings from other artists. I would prefer to have paintings from other artists than having my own work hanging upstairs. You know, my wife has some work hanging upstairs too. I just love it. But that's because she did it. It's not because it's not because I did it. I don't like looking at my own trophies. I think that's it's a bit of baloney. Now, don't forget, I haven't done 7 paintings and I'm proud of them all. I've done well over 2,000 of them, and I guess you reach a point where it's not so important for you that your mother hangs your crayon drawings on your fridge anymore, on the refrigerator door anymore. It's kind of important to get on with life, especially if you have to make a living out of it. That's a whole different story. You can only afford so much sentiment there. But yeah, that sunflowers, I really liked it. I really like how raw it is. And yeah, it's probably a wise thing just to leave it as it is. Yes, it was painted by a 20-year younger man than I am now. But if I want to look back in the future at things that I have loved and enjoyed, I'll look back at photos of my kids. We barely have any photos of our kids up on the mantle or any of that kind of stuff. We just don't do that. It's not really we love our kids. It's just not a fan of trophies. Not a fan of people who stand in front of mirrors. Not a fan of people who have specially made trophy cases for their sports accomplishments. It's no different, you know. No, I'm not even a nice guy, but the celebration of a person, the celebration of oneself is, well, in my opinion, it's overdone these days. Okay, I know, I'm sounding pretty nasty. I'm sounding like quite the curmudgeon. I'm all over Christmas. celebration of Christ's birth. I am absolutely, I'm 100% for that. But regarding human individuals, meh. That gets a bit carried away. Okay, that's enough political leaning garbage. I know it's not actual politics, but sorry, I probably sound kind of sour to you, but I can only talk about Payne's Gray for so long, you know? I'm not that bright. Alright, so in general I'm, going left to right, trying to keep sort of a consistent and boring direction. Because I don't want to hint at a sketch. If it happens, it's no big deal. I just kind of tend to like to avoid it if I can. And this stuff, I'm getting the feeling it's still going to be wet tomorrow, but we'll see. Okay. I hope that was boring enough. But yeah, we have a dark canvas. In general, I'm against that, tinting it too dark. But because, if your technique is to really, really, really go impasto with the brush, there's no harm done either. It has to do with the thickness of the paint that you're laying on. And I suppose, if you've been watching the channel for a while, you know that often even my knife paintings, I don't always lay the paint on that thickly. Sometimes it's a bit rarefied, but where you want your highlights, you can lay it on more thickly, as I will do. And for the sake of illustration, whatever I lay on here now with a knife is going to pop out of the canvas. And I love that. It's just, yeah, it's like a burst of flavor. So that's where we'll go with it. Just wiping off. I mixed up way too much Payne's Gray and paint thinner. Yes, that's right. I said turpentine before. I'm actually just using paint thinner. Not solvent. Don't use solvent. Thinner. You can use thinner because if you were to take some, what do I have there? Varsol paint. Yeah, Varsol paint thinner. Good for cleaning, good for cleanup, good for thinning off paint. That's the whole point of it. Oil paint, that is. If you were just to take a drop of that and lay it on a glass sheet, just a single drop, use an eyedropper, lay it on that glass sheet and let it dry. Might take a day or two. By the time it's gone and you look at it again, look at it closely, you will see that there is a residue left behind. It's almost, it'll be slightly yellow. It'll be, well, not really yellow necessarily, but it'll be a little bit tarry. If you leave it long enough, it becomes a powder. But you can see that it's not just completely clean. There is a matrix in there, that acts as a bonding agent. It's a good chemical and mechanical bonding agent to a white canvas. I know that gesso is latex based. You can paint oil over gesso. It's been done for centuries, actually. Your first bond with gesso, which is essentially ground up chalk or gypsum, or it's changed over the years. is that it's so porous that when you lay your thinned off oil base on there, it sinks into all those pores. So you have a fantastic mechanical bond. Now, you still have a lot of texture on there. You have a great mechanical bond. Now you start to put layers of paint on top of it. You know, using straight paint, using turpentine to thin it off, and then straight paint, and then, you know, with adding oils to your paint, adding, you know, going fat over lean. They're all chemical bonds, mostly, because they're all oil related. Anyway, I guess in the long run, maybe I should use a whiteboard to describe this stuff sometimes. Anyway, blah 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 blah. It's late. I'm starting to flail. No, it's not a tick. I mean, you know, if there were mosquitoes in here, I could probably get away with it. Okay, be quiet, Grumpy. Talk to you soon, guys. Bye.